Power, by its very nature, is a phenomenon that is both profoundly alluring and deeply terrifying. As Robert Greene frequently emphasizes in his masterworks, human beings inherently crave the predictable. They seek comfort, safety, and solace in the familiar rhythms of habits and everyday routines. However, those who hold true power, those who manipulate the strings from the shadows, know perfectly well that this desperate desire for predictability is, in fact, humanity's greatest and most exploitable weakness. The psychological traits we classify under the dark triad, specifically Machiavellianism and psychopathy, intersect precisely at this critical breaking point. The ability to flawlessly manage and manipulate the expectations of your adversary, and when the moment is right, to ruthlessly shatter all the rules, creating a permanent, paralyzing shockwave in their minds. Most ordinary people operate under the fragile delusion that power is synonymous with brute force, loud aggression, or overt physical dominance. They believe that the loudest voice in the room is the strongest. But true, invincible power is entirely different. It is an iron fist delicately hidden inside a velvet glove. It is the art of strategic silence. Human psychology has a fatal flaw. It tends to fall into a state of profound complacency and dangerous comfort when faced with someone who displays weakness, forgiveness, or submission. This illusion of weakness is a masterclass in dark psychology. A brilliant mind that skillfully wields this illusion does not hunt its prey. Instead, it simply smiles and watches as the prey willingly walks into the trap. Seduction, in this context, is not merely a romantic or physical act. It is the supreme art of convincing minds, rivals, and even bloodthirsty enemies to bow down to your will by their own choice, believing it was their idea all along. Making your enemies believe that you are weak, that you are merciful, or that you have completely lost control is the most devastating psychological attack you can ever launch against them. While they revel in the intoxicating euphoria of their perceived victory, while their egos are stroked and their guards drop entirely, you are merely waiting for the pieces on the chessboard to move into the exact squares you designed. You orchestrate their downfall not with a sword, but with their own hubris. In the visual language of our minds, picture this strategy not as a direct assault, but as a creeping shadow that slowly engulfs a room, punctuated only by sudden, terrifying flashes of blood red. The absolute foundation of dark psychology is this: the victim only realizes the true horror of the trap they have fallen into when they hear the heavy doors lock shut behind them. To understand this, we must ask ourselves a deeply uncomfortable question that forces us to confront our own dark side. What is the most elegant, the most flawless way to destroy an enemy? Is it to fight them openly on the battlefield, risking your own blood and resources? Or is it to seduce their ego, feed their vanity, and convince them to engineer their own demise with their very own hands? Human psychological vulnerabilities have not changed for thousands of years. Our inherent vanity, our endless greed, our desperate need to feel important, and our fundamental desire to feel secure, these remain the sharpest, most exquisite weapons in the arsenal of a master manipulator. In this exploration, we will strip away the moral facades of history and expose the silent, slithering, serpent-like nature of true power. The history of Renaissance Italy is a dark tapestry woven with blood, betrayal, and relentless intrigue, culminating perfectly in the life of Cesare Borgia. He was the embodiment of raw power and Machiavellian manipulation, the very man whose terrifying genius inspired Niccolo Machiavelli to write his legendary treatise, The Prince. To understand the zenith of dark psychology, we must travel back to the year 1502 and witness his absolute masterpiece, the infamous massacre of Senigallia. As the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI, Cesare Borgia was expanding his empire across the Italian peninsula at an unprecedented and terrifying speed. Leading the papal armies, he was ruthlessly crushing every city and duchy that dared to stand in his path. However, his power was growing so rapidly and uncontrollably that his own mercenary commanders, the Condottieri, and his greatest allies, the Orsini and Vitelli families, began to harbor a deep, existential fear of him. Sensing that they would inevitably be his next victims, these highly skilled and heavily armed commanders formed a secret alliance known as the Magione Conspiracy, officially raising the flag of rebellion against Cesare. In an instant, Cesare's supposedly invincible army was on the verge of total collapse. All of Italy held its breath, believing that the great Borgia was finally cornered, weakened, and that his inevitable end had arrived. But it is precisely at this seemingly hopeless juncture that the chilling, empathy-devoid, and entirely results-oriented Machiavellian intellect of the Dark Triad takes control. Instead of marching against the rebel commanders with a drawn sword, throwing a fit of rage, or screaming empty threats, Cesare did the exact opposite of what anyone expected. He retreated. Concealing all his boiling rage, hatred, and burning desire for vengeance behind a mask of absolute perfection, he approached the rebels with an incredible display of narcissistic charm and feigned affection. He dispatched messengers to them, whispering sweet, intoxicating lies. He told them that he still needed them desperately, that the entire rebellion was merely a tragic misunderstanding, that he owed all his power and success to their brilliance, and that he only wished to share his newly conquered lands to make them even richer. The art of seduction is not confined to the bedroom. Cesare Borgia masterfully seduced the vanity, the fragile egos, and the insatiable greed of his greatest enemies. The rebel commanders, utterly intoxicated by the belief that Cesare had bowed to them and feared their might, fell into a massive delusion of grandeur. Their belief in their own supremacy blinded them so completely that they signed Cesare's poisonous peace treaty without a second thought. To celebrate and cement this newfound friendship, Cesare invited them to a magnificent banquet at his fortress in the coastal town of Senigallia. The commanders were so blindly confident in themselves and their newly acquired power that they left their massive armies outside the city, entering the fortress accompanied only by small, ceremonial guard units. Cesare greeted them at the gates of the castle with overwhelming warmth, genuine-sounding laughter, deep embraces, and exaggerated compliments. He honored them, making them feel like absolute kings as he guided them toward the banquet hall. But the moment the heavy wooden doors were bolted and locked from the outside, the warm, affectionate smile on Cesare's face instantly vanished, replaced by a freezing, emotionless mask of death. His loyal assassins, who had been hiding in the dark corners and behind the heavy velvet curtains of the room, emerged simultaneously upon a single, silent gesture, gripping garrots and daggers. Without offering a single word of explanation to the men who dared to rebel against him, Cesare had every single one of the commanders ruthlessly strangled to death right there at the banquet table. Without shedding a drop of his own army's blood, without fighting a single major battle, he wiped all his enemies off the face of the earth at the exact moment they felt the most powerful and secure. He whispered exactly what they wanted to hear, and with that sweet lie, he orchestrated their eternal silence. To extract the true essence of Cesare Borgia's terrifying theater at Senigallia, we must analyze the anatomy of dark minds and understand how the dark triad manifests in our modern world. This is the crucial intersection where Robert Greene's philosophy shifts from historical observation to urgent, modern-day survival strategy. The brilliance and manipulative prowess demonstrated by Borgia were not left behind on the bloody battlefields of Renaissance Italy. They have quietly evolved and adapted. Today, these exact same psychological power dynamics are constantly at play in the gleaming skyscrapers of the corporate world, in the subtle power struggles of our social circles, and in the everyday psychological warfare of modern life. Machiavellianism is not, as the masses naively assume, simply about telling cheap lies or tricking people with petty scams. It is a profound, almost terrifying ability to completely remove emotions, moral constraints, and the heavy burden of conscience from the equation, allowing one to evaluate situations with a pure, cold, and hyper-analytical gaze. The most critical, life-or-death takeaway from Borgia's masterpiece is the concept of superhuman emotional control and impulse management. When an ordinary, psychologically fragile person is betrayed, they react predictably. They yell, they throw tantrums, they swear revenge aloud, and by doing so, they instantly reveal their intentions to their enemies. True power, however, lies in the ability to suppress that blazing inferno of rage, to dress that burning hatred in a sharp, tailored suit, and to smile genuinely into the eyes of the person who just stabbed you in the back. This is the flawless manifestation of Robert Greene's 48 laws of power, specifically Law 3, conceal your intentions, and Law 15, crush your enemy totally. In the modern arena, this strategy dictates that you must never open a visible front against your rivals. You must keep them as close as your dearest friends, patiently map out their secrets, and wait with reptilian stillness for their weakest moment, that singular second when they finally drop their guard. The art of seduction is far more dangerous than mere physical attraction or charismatic speech. It is the calculated process of identifying the gaping psychological voids in your victim's mind and taking them hostage with the irresistible promise of filling those very voids. For the arrogant commanders at Senigallia, their voids were their blinding pride, their desperate need for validation, and their illusion of invincibility. Cesare offered them exactly that illusion, and in exchange, he took their lives, their armies, and their lands. Even today, human beings remain completely defenseless against those who stroke their egos and tell them the fairy tales they so desperately wish were true. If someone in your modern life is constantly praising you without cause, offering you unbelievable concessions despite your mistakes, and acting far more compliant and submissive than the situation demands, you must stop immediately and look at your surroundings. because the heavy doors of the banquet hall are likely about to be locked behind you. The greatest weapon of individuals possessing dark triad traits, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy, is their chilling lack of empathy. This emotional void provides them with the terrifying advantage of viewing life and the people in it as nothing more than pieces on a chessboard, devoid of any inherent human value. To them, other people, no matter how close they may appear, are merely pawns that serve a specific, calculated purpose, destined to be sacrificed the moment they are no longer useful. We must accept a dark but awakening truth. The world we live in is not a fair, moral fairy tale where the good are always rewarded and the wicked are punished. The world is a massive, ruleless game played by those who know how to read the board to their advantage, those who know how to wear the right masks, and those who refuse to become slaves to their own emotions. If you do not want to be the disposable pawn sacrificed at this merciless table, you have absolutely no choice but to understand the mind of the dark player and learn their rules before they play you.